Today for Devotions with Daniella, we are reading from the first book of Daniella. This is chapter 12, Coming to America. Landing in America was nothing like what I had pictured. After a long flight with a pregnant mother, 5 children under 12, and a teenager with a cast up to her hip, trying to fit onto a standard airplane seat, we were all exhausted and annoyed, but also curious, to see the evil country of our origin. Born in the Philippines, grew up in Latin America, all inside this international cult. So we've never been to the US. The only one of us who remembered America was Dad, since Mom had left at the age of 2 and never returned. None of us kids had ever been to our home country before. We stepped off the plane at LAX, and the noise immediately assaulted my ears. America was so loud. The cities of Brazil weren't quiet either, but there was a warmth and friendliness there that seemed to soften the edges, and I had been able to tune out a lot of the chatter because it was usually in Portuguese. But almost every conversation around me was in English, and I felt like they were all going straight to my brain. All the voices bumping around at full volume inside my skull. This is the part that helped people read my book and then call me up and say, "Hey, from the autistic camp, you know you're one of us, right?" I didn't remember any other countries I'd been in being even close to this overwhelming. Not by a long shot. It's about sound sensitivity. That's what I was saying. As we moved through the terminal, someone pushing me in a thin metal wheelchair with several bags on my lap, I caught glances of the world outside. Bright and bold desert sun illuminating palm trees and large swaths of concrete. It was shocking to see English everywhere. I couldn't help but read every word of every sign and label I saw. I had only lived in countries where everyone else spoke a different language than us. English had only ever been ours, the family's. It had never occurred to me how strange and isolating this was, to be separated from our neighbors, not only by our 10-foot concrete walls, but by the very way we communicated. And here I was, in a place where I suddenly had so much in common with these strangers I had been taught to hate my whole life. Grandpa had said America was rich, and that certainly looked true as we exited the terminal. Shiny new cars sped past without peeling paint or rusted metal, and most still had their bumpers. Everyone I saw, even the kids, was dressed in stylish and impeccably clean clothes that fit them well. I would eventually make my peace with the way English assaulted my ears, but it took much longer for me to get used to the huge houses, how anyone could walk right up to the door of a 5-bedroom mansion and ring the bell. No giant gates, no concrete walls, no guys in camo standing outside the fanciest ones with automatic rifles. This is part of what I've predicted will be coming to America now that our wealth inequality is getting to be so intense. What did rich Americans do with their glass bottles if they didn't break them into jagged pieces and glue them to the tops of walls to stop thieves from coming over? The lack of walls, it turned out, would change everything in our lives. It was probably also one of the main reasons there weren't more Children of God communes in the United States. The suburbs of America can't hide compounds filled with 100 people, half of whom should have been in school. Grown women walking around half naked, quoting the Word of God and Moses David, or uncles doling out punishments. We moved into a 3-bedroom apartment in San Diego that we would share with another family. The new family had 5 sons still at home, so we were 18 people total, crammed into 1,000 square feet with an RV as overflow. It felt even more crowded than my childhood days of sleeping in triple bunks. As a result, and out of necessity, we spent more time in public than I ever had in my life. I sat beside the swimming pool at the apartment complex, the sun on my face and leg cast, while Mary played with the youngest of the teenage boys, Isaac and Angelo. I hiked about on crutches in the California mountains and explored the RV park next to our apartment building with our dusty and unsupervised group of teenagers. Despite living among the systemites, we still weren't allowed fellowship with them. So there were a lot of Children of God gatherings with other households. We even had an organized youth group with monthly picnics, ball games, and pool parties. It was one of the first times in my life that I experienced adults planning something special for teens and children for the sole purpose of wanting us to enjoy ourselves. with hardly any religious programming involved. Because we had to hide that we weren't in school, they couldn't make us spend our days on the streets begging for change or passing out pamphlets about the rapture and apocalypse with half-naked angels on the front. From what they told us when we asked them if they wanted to ask Jesus into their hearts, Americans seemed like they were all Christians anyway, though I had been trained to expect they were sheep in wolves' clothing. And there were boys. In Bello, there had been 6 teenage girls in the commune, but we hadn't lived with boys our age for years. Raina, Jamie, and I had interacted with enough systemite teens when we did our various missionary stuff to think those boys were both different from uncles and very intriguing. At almost 17, Raina felt she was a little old to still be single, but moving into a house full of boys fixed that problem. She paired up happily with the oldest son pretty much the day we showed up. I had no such luck. Despite being in the land of heathens, at 14, I was still mostly undesirable, still the weird girl with frizzy hair, glasses, and a bonus giant leg cast. Even without romance, even crowded into our tiny apartment with the constant pain of my broken shin knitting itself slowly back together, the worry about mom's pregnancy, and the general sensory overload and stress of yet another transition, especially with how much I missed the culture of Brazil, my life felt better in America. It was the closest thing I'd ever experienced to what I thought of as a normal life. I felt a knot loosen that I hadn't even known I'd been carrying inside me, even as I tried to remind myself not to get too comfortable and not to feel too safe. I knew it would only ever be temporary. And like everything in the family, I had no idea how long this temporary would last. You can get signed copies of Uncultured here or listen to me read it to you on Spotify Premium. And by the way, this is my backup account. I'm using it for a week because I'm suspended on the other one, but make sure you're following me there as well.